A machine doesn't become part of a botnet in a single dramatic moment. There's rarely a flashing skull and crossbones screen or an obvious warning. Instead, it usually joins quietly, step by step, through a chain of compromises that looks disturbingly normal at each stage until it isn't. Welcome to BlueHat Cybersec Academy. That's the uncomfortable truth about botnets. They don't need brilliance at every step. They only need small, repeated failures in defense, stitched together into a reliable infection chain. Now stay with me here, because once you understand this chain, you stop seeing random malware infections and start seeing a structured system that behaves almost like an assembly line. Here's where it starts. The core idea behind botnet infection chains. This whole idea starts with something most people misunderstand. A botnet is not a single infection, it's a pipeline. And each part of that pipeline has a very specific job. First, it gets initial access, then it establishes persistence. After that, it fetches a secondary payload. Then, it disables visibility or defenses. Next, it connects outward to a command and control system, also called C2. And finally, it waits for instructions. Now here's the key insight. If even one of these stages fails, the chain might break. But attackers don't rely on perfection. They rely on redundancy and scale. And that modular structure is exactly what makes botnets so resilient and so difficult to fully eliminate. Let's break down the first phase. Entry point mechanics. The infection chain almost always starts with something extremely unremarkable. The goal is simple. Make it look normal enough that nobody questions it. This is the entry point, also called the low-friction compromise stage. Attackers are not trying to impress anyone here. They just want access. They usually get it through phishing emails, unpatched software vulnerabilities, cracked or trojanized software, exposed services like RDP or SSH, and malvertising or drive-by downloads. What matters here isn't sophistication, it's probability. Botnets scale by going wide, not deep. And sometimes a reused password or a single unpatched flaw is all it takes to start the chain. Next comes the initial payload stage. Once inside, the first payload is intentionally small. Almost boring. This is usually a loader or dropper. Its job is not damage, it's preparation. It checks for sandboxes or virtual machines, disables security tools, establishes persistence through registry keys or startup tasks, and downloads the real malware. At this stage, the system is not fully part of a botnet yet, it's just being staged. And that's why it's often missed. It doesn't look dangerous on its own. Now the transition. Becoming a botnet node. This is where the system becomes part of a botnet ecosystem. It connects to command and control, C2, infrastructure, registers itself, receives a bot ID, and sets up communication channels like HTTP, HTTPS, or DNS-based traffic. At this point, it is no longer just compromised, it is enrolled. But from the user's side, nothing changes. Everything still works normally. That illusion is intentional. Persistence layer, staying alive after reboot. Botnets don't want short-term infections. They need survival. So they use scheduled tasks, registry keys, system services, boot-level persistence, and sometimes fileless memory-based techniques. Advanced variants even self-heal if one method is removed. Another restores access. At this stage, cleanup becomes much harder because there is no single point of failure anymore. C2 communication. Hidden control. A botnet is useless without control. That control happens through command and control traffic designed to blend in. It may look like normal HTTPS, DNS queries, or even cloud API traffic. Some use peer-to-peer structures to avoid shutdown. Everything is designed to look legitimate. Individually, nothing seems suspicious. Only patterns over time reveal the truth. Activation phase. When bots are used, once stable, the bot can be activated. It may be used for DDoS attacks, credential theft, spam distribution, crypto mining, lateral movement, or additional malware delivery. Many bots stay dormant for long periods to avoid detection, waiting for large-scale activation. That patience is part of their power. Why these chains are hard to stop? It's not just complexity, it's structure. They are modular, so breaking one stage doesn't reveal everything. They are redundant, so they survive partial takedowns. And each stage looks harmless on its own. A download looks normal. A scheduled task looks routine. Encrypted traffic looks safe. The danger only appears when the sequence is connected. Security systems and humans both evaluate events individually. This email is fine. This process looks normal. This traffic is encrypted, so it must be safe. Each statement can be true on its own, but botnets depend on chaining normal events into something abnormal. That's the real trick. Defense approach: breaking the chain. Stopping this requires behavioral thinking, not static detection. Monitor outbound patterns over time, correlate small anomalies, enforce patching, restrict unknown execution, segment networks, and focus on process relationships rather than isolated files. The key shift is this: not what is this event, but what does this sequence mean? A botnet infection is rarely one mistake. It's a chain of small, reasonable decisions that go unchecked. The danger isn't obvious compromise. It's silent transition from normal to controlled, with no single moment that clearly gives it away. That's why understanding infection chains matters more than memorizing malware types, because the most dangerous systems are the ones that look completely fine, until they don't. Now here is a challenge for you. Imagine the scenario. A user installs a free PDF tool, a scheduled task appears shortly after, encrypted HTTPS traffic starts happening periodically, CPU spikes at night, and no antivirus alerts appear. Now answer this. Which stage of the botnet chain is most likely active here? What would you investigate first, and why? And what control would you implement first to break the chain? Drop your answers in the comments and explain it like a security analyst. If this helped you see malware as a structured process instead of random noise, you're on the right track for the Malware Encyclopedia series. Like, share, and subscribe. Because next time, we break down how command and control traffic hides inside normal network behavior and why most defenses only notice it when it's already too late. Get smarter responses, upload files and images, and more.